I've been doing networking for quite a while. I've been fortunate to be able to do it in a number of realms. I've got my day job working for a big old private university, and we have centers in different parts of the US and different parts of Europe. So by the time it's done, I'm doing huge networks, although I know that there are some huger, but we're pretty huge. And I get to do small networks and oddball little things and work in different countries. And I have also had my own company on the side doing small networks, mostly in farm settings. But I've just been around a long time doing this stuff. So the reason I point that out is not to boast, but to kind of let you know where I'm coming from with my frame of reference as I present this stuff. Sharing where I come from and what shapes my thoughts a little bit. So back to our topic, zooming out. All right. So the whole goal of this topic is to hopefully present for your consideration some philosophy on helping you to more efficiently get to the root cause of perceived problems. Sometimes those problems are actual problems, and sometimes the perception is not really, what reality ends up being. So, again, we're talking more of a philosophical approach to troubleshooting, not so much specific technical how-to, but again, hopefully there's some value for you. And just the phrase zooming out kind of sounds like a buzzword or a buzz phrase or something you'd hear from a life coach. Anybody who knows me knows I hate marketing jargon. I'm not a huge fan of overused buzzwords. So this must be something I believe in. And I will say very much so. And that'll come out as we talk, this whole notion of zooming out. So even if you have no idea where we're really going with this discussion, probably anybody and everybody can latch on to the whole notion of, even if you're not a camera person, and I am, and I know that there are a lot of camera people in the group just from seeing the names coming through the chat. Some of you I recognize. In movies, in videos, whatever, the zooming in, zooming out. You zoom in on something, focus is on that one detail in the frame. Your thoughts are allowed to just kind of wrap around that one particular detail. And you kind of forget that there's other stuff outside of that, hyper-focus view. And I'm saying, okay, let's just zoom out. Let's get more of the situation into not only our view, but into our thoughts. And, it's kind of a trade-off. There's more to focus on. So your thoughts have to jump around into different directions, but at the same time, there's benefit to doing that. And that's what we're going to talk about here as we apply that to the notion of wireless support. So I give you the purple martin house. Purple martin is a species of birds, if you're not familiar. The two decoys that are sitting on top of this thing are purple martin decoys. And this is in my backyard. And we do get purple martins. But if you look at the picture, there are no birds. There's no birds on the perch. There's no birds sticking out of any of the little houses. If I didn't know better, if I didn't know what was going on, as I zoom in on that birdhouse, it's a fairly zoomed in shot here. I might think, oh geez, all the birds died from disease. Or maybe it's too early in the migration and they just didn't come here yet. Or maybe they don't like our house suddenly. There's something about it that, they've changed their minds and they're not gonna visit us this year. Or maybe they got extinct. I can I can jump to any number of conclusions just by looking at the birdhouse and seeing a lack of birds. But reality doesn't hit until I zoom out. And really hard to see in this picture. And again, this is my backyard. So I point out where the birdhouse is. And then if you look at what's on the deck of the pool, we have El Gato. And so we got a cat prowling around, and that's the real reason why the birds are not showing themselves on the house, because the cat's kind of wandering the yard. It's not my cat, one of the neighbors let their cat out. The cat decided to come visit, and all the birds just said, I don't want any of that. And they made themselves scarce. But two fundamental different sets of circumstances letting you come to a conclusion about what's going on, whether you're zoomed in or zoomed out, just to kind of set the tone here. So back to the topic of wireless, zooming out when it comes to wireless. I know a lot of people, trouble hits, network trouble, wireless trouble, and boom, we go right into the weeds. We go right into, Jesus, we got to get packet capture going. We got to find a place to listen to that traffic. We got to, update a driver. We got to do something automatically, just a knee jerk, based on past successes, perhaps, but just a knee jerk jump right into action without settling down a little bit. Usually that knee-jerk reaction is based on an assumption. Something isn't working in that section of the network. We better start rebooting controllers. We better start rebooting APs. It's like, geez Louise, if you don't trust your equipment to that degree, when you just start rebooting everything, you probably are using the wrong hardware set. Right. So I'm asking, how many of us actually just know intuitively what the problem is every time? Sometimes it's obvious, and I'm not denying that it's not. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, an AP is out. Well, the controller just crashed. We lost the router that the controller's connected to. Sometimes it is blatantly obvious, but more often than not, it's not obvious. But for some of us, we just act like we know what the problem is, and we find out that we're wrong, which means it takes longer to get to the real problem. And I'm challenging you with the bottom bullet. If we never learn the art and the science of the big picture, that which you get to after you zoom out, how are you going to be successful when your tunnel vision doesn't work and doesn't lead you to the right answer? And again, a lot of us are very, very quick to jump to something rather than just slowing down a little bit. And I'm here to tell you that if you start looking automatically for Wi-Fi problems on the wireless LAN, you just might be disappointed. And that's probably sounds a little bit strange. All problems are not wireless that feel wireless. And we'll talk about that more. But just want you to consider for a minute, when we talk about wireless networking, what is an access point, right? It's a bridge, if you will, between two technologies. So to the up arrow, we've got 802.11. Down below, we've got 802.3. Both of them represent a realm where all kinds of stuff can go on, but the access point is really just the magical bridge with that wonderful shared 802 MAC layer that lets the wireless talk to the wired, and all kinds of wonderful things happen within that access point. But it really does kind of represent two fundamentally independent realms, both which are very important, both which have their own complexities. Absolutely, I know I'm stating the obvious, but sometimes the obvious is worth stating. And I'm telling you that, yeah, I'm acknowledging Wi-Fi has a lot of moving parts. That's why it's easy to jump right into it and expect that we're going to find fault when a wireless problem is reported. Easy to expect to find fault within the 802.11 framework, just because there are so many moving parts. And just a list of examples here, right? We are on Wi-Fi 6E, to use the horrible number scheme. And if you dissect what that means, we may see 802.11b, A, G, N, AC, AX, new 6 gig stuff, wave 1, wave 2, depending on whatever technology. So just what 802.11 version is in play kind of takes us in different places in the discussion. And then depending on what 802.11 is in play, RF is the physical layer for Wi-Fi, so we're in different spectrum depending on what 802.11 version we're talking about. Within each standard, there's optional features. Some of them made it to the light of day, some didn't. Not all clients support them, not all APs support them. Very complicated discussion when you start getting down into those weeds. And then there's the vendor specific options. Band steering is an easy one to point out. There is no 802.11 based definition of how to do band steering, so everybody does it differently, and sometimes it's absolutely problematic, and that's why a lot of us won't use it, is because it's problematic. And then we've got the reality that there is the consumer grade clients versus the enterprise grade clients, and that creates things that we have to think about and consider when we're looking at wireless trouble. How was your design set up? Is it more capacity oriented, or is it kind of an old school coverage design? That's going to really inform certain situations on how you troubleshoot. And then my favorite, code bugs. Are you running on problematic code? And again, we're still in the realm of 802.11. And I'm saying, yeah, there's just a lot here. And if you don't know what the riffs and sifs and diffs and piffs, oh my, are all about, then it's time to hit the CWNA book. But at the end of it all, sometimes I'm astounded, how the hell does any of this actually work? It's so busy, it's so complicated in spots. It's just absolutely astounding that it really does work. But again, I'm telling you that Wi-Fi is just part of the picture, and I know that this is not the best perspective of the drawing, but Wi-Fi is just part of the overall network. And from the top down, you've got an AP, and you've got all the different SSIDs and different kinds of wireless security, and maybe you got controllers. And if you don't have controllers, maybe you've got things like the VLAN aggregation devices that are out there now. And if you're running radius, depending on what your security is, or if you're doing kind of even not 802.1x, but if you're doing something like, the multi PSK kind of stuff that depend on radius, if you're doing device classification, things can get pretty busy. And then you got your core services, DNS, DHCP, back-end credential stores like Active Directory. You got all of that going on the LAN side of things, even before you get to the internet. And then when you get out to the internet, you've got ACLs on the edge, or firewall rules on the edge, and then you got whatever is going on out there on the internet itself. And destination related problems can make the wireless feel difficult. So Wi-Fi as a construct in the overall network framework, it's just part of everything. And it's very easy to, for some reason, for some people, it's very easy to discount everything below the AP and just get hung up that the wireless problem has to be above the AP. And for what it's worth, this comes from a blog I wrote, the soon-to-be famous cocktail napkin for wireless support, or something like that. Pretty easy to find on my Wired Not blog if you want to go look at what this is really all about. We've also got now the fact that so many wireless solutions are cloud managed. That complicates things. You're looking at a screenshot of something that happened to me very recently. This is a leading cloud managed wireless solution. We started getting all kinds of email alerts. This AP is down, this AP is out, this AP is no longer connected. It's like, oh, geez. Just from the alerts, panic set in. It set in, my mind, and It's just like, oh, gee, what is going on? It by the alerts, it's like, did something happen with our management VLAN for the wireless network? Something has to be just catastrophically terrible. What's going on here? And at the same time, we're not getting any trouble tickets. And that orange bar, some security interceptor is messing with the CERT, aka stolen CA CERT plus Snoopy IT, whatever the hell that is about. There's a whole slew of messages. That wasn't the only one we were getting, but it felt like just utter chaos based on what we were seeing in the dashboard, the cloud management dashboard, and what we were getting for alerts. But there's no trouble tickets. And then in our testing, well, do we feel any problems when we test? No, absolutely not. And then we got with the vendor and it's like, oh, well, we're having cloud side problems. Oh, okay. And, absolutely nothing's going on for any of our customers operationally. And we've got something we need to straighten out in the cloud. That's a whole new paradigm. That's a whole new thing. And it's not so easy to verify that without them telling you or without going, knowing where to go look about the cloud status. It's not easy to get into the local devices directly and see, okay, this AP that said it's out actually has, sorry about that. This AP that said it's out actually has, 50 clients and they're all doing well. It's hard to see that sometimes on a cloud managed solution. So just a whole new set of things to digest and process and a whole new set of hurdles to get over in the battle to not jump to conclusions. So I'm telling you, trouble hits. My first step, take a deep breath, kind of slow it down. Give yourself just whether it's a few minutes or a half hour, whatever. If the problem is not brutally obvious, slow down and process. What are people saying for the trouble? How far flung is it? What are they not saying? What is working? What is not working? And then also what is working? What are the things they're not complaining about? Take a look at the easy indicators before you spring into action. What I'm calling easy indicators, help desk, make a call. People that you trust that are on site, make a call, see what they've got to say. We've all paid a lot of money for dashboards. We've all paid a lot of money for monitoring systems. Well, this is when you need them, but for some reason, a lot of times we don't even pull them up and see what they're telling us. What are we getting for log data? Syslog, webhooks, whatever. What are we being told before we just jump into action and think we know what we need to do? And I'm saying slow down. Unfortunately, some things are going to be intermittent. They're going to be time specific. Those get a little bit more challenging. But even just defining the scope of the problem, which we talked about on another webinar, if you happen to be there, sometimes just defining the scope of the problem takes this period of, reflection. And I'm not saying spend a lot of time, twiddling your thumbs and taking it all in, but I'm saying give yourself whatever time is needed to most efficiently at least get to the bottom of what could be happening before you know where to go look. So if the problem is not glaringly obvious, zoom out. Remember, widen your focus. So what that means to me, I kind of have this mental exercise, get above it all. Yeah, it's easy to be in the moment, easy to be hyper-focused. And I'm telling you, you can master this mental exercise of just getting yourself above the situation where you can actually look down and see all kinds of stuff in the situation. Like I said, consider what's working while you go towards what isn't, right? You're considering the entire LAN and wireless network all at the same time. You're visualizing the entire topology. You've got to be familiar enough with how everything lays out to be able to do this. but hopefully you are, because it's what we do for a living. You got to remember the OSI model as you think. Just this morning, we had a cable problem that wasn't particularly obvious and really easy to go hunting for problem in switch ports, and turned out to be a bad pair on a cable in a new space. On cable, it was supposedly certified, but you got to remember the OSI model and just be in tune enough with everything to keep reminding yourself, yes, it's a wireless trouble being reported, but that is just the thing that's out at the end of the string. And I got to be familiar enough with the whole string to consider everything, right? Your informational inputs. That's what I was talking about. Talking to people, checking your dashboards, checking the obvious stuff. APs are up, controllers up, everything looks good. DHCP scope is not exhausted. There's nothing obvious going on. Establishing what's working when you go to look for what isn't, that's part of your consideration of the informational inputs. Avoid rabbit holes. Oh my God, so easy to just get tripped up by one little thing, and rabbit holes will bring you back to that folly of the laser vision, the tunnel vision. It's like, oh geez, I see one thing here. Yeah, that could be a single user oddity that isn't the reason 200 people are out of service, but you just got sucked down a rabbit hole, and those other 200 people are now waiting for you to come to your senses and get out of that rabbit hole. Sometimes a visit's required depending on what kind of environment you support. If you're not local, do you have a trusted set of hands that you can recruit to help you get above it all? And if not, do you have anything that's deployable? And again, we're still talking about just trying to establish what the heck is going on and where it could be. And there are challenges whether you're remote, with your support, or whether you're local. And I'm saying above all, when we talk about zooming out to better assess problems, just keep an open mind. Same hand-drawn, high-quality drawing from before, right? You got your 802.11 up top, you got your 802.3 on the bottom, your Ethernet is under the AP, right? So in red, the problem may well be in the 802.11 side of it, the wireless side of it. It may also be in the LAN. It may be on the wired side of the AP, and that's a fact. But it's still may feel like wireless to one or more wireless users. I've had APs that have had crappy connections back to their switches, high error counts building up on the switch ports because something in the physical layer between the AP and the switch, and it manifests itself with poor wireless performance for the wireless users. That's what I'm, just one example of what may be below. Or you get out there on the internet. In one of my main job, we have a security team that on occasion will black hole a route because it leads to bad places. Well, if the users don't know that their traffic is being black holed, and the only place they're trying to go is to where that traffic has been black holed, well, guess what? It feels like the wireless network isn't working. All of a sudden, the Wi-Fi sucks because of some security problem. So the problem can be, both halves of the network side, the wireless or the wired, or can even be beyond your own borders out on the internet. So keeping an open mind, it's pivotal to this notion of zooming out. Just give you some examples of, problems that came to me as, these are wireless. We have wireless problems, right? Client device only works in 2.4 gig, and maybe you're not running 2.4. So the device gets fired up. It's not capable of 5 gig, therefore it can't find the network. You weren't involved in the turn up of this device. Guess what? The client owner is going to tell you that your network isn't working. Network is working fine. It's just there wasn't communication for that before that device got brought in. And, it's not uncommon to see very, very, very high dollar production devices that fall into this trap of only being 2.4. if you look at what's going on right now with all the VR headsets, they all want MDNS. Um, not really a lot of fun to run on a big network. So somebody brings it in, somehow manages to get on a network. If you've got a PSK network or open network, whatever, they're able to connect the device and use it. But then when they want to stream it to a computer, it doesn't work. And that's where, again, your network sucks. Well, no, your device kind of sucks. At the end of it, it wasn't really meant to be on this kind of network, and we don't do MDNS. So, now the uncomfortable questions: do you learn how to be in MDNS environment, or do you turn the device away? This doesn't mean wireless isn't working. It means there's configuration gaps between the device and what it needs, because it's kind of a consumer grade device and what we typically think of as wireless enterprise, um, configurations kind of thing. Then there's always the expired user password. If you're doing PEEP and MS Chat v2 and passwords are used, you go to get on the network, your password is expired. Very easy to jump to, oh, the network won't let me on. The network sucks. The network is broke because I can't get on. And then when it comes time to troubleshoot, you look it up in the directory. It's like, the network is just fine. You got an expired password. You didn't get the 10 notices that say that your password is coming due to change. And for whatever reason, you have opted to create your own problem, whether knowingly or unknowingly. And our network is just fine, but it's reported as a problem. Unfortunately, I've been on the losing end of the expired radius server certs. Those very important certs when they peter out and you don't catch it, and all of a sudden nobody can authenticate. The wireless network itself is fine, despite 10,000 plus people screaming that it's not. It's like, we do not have a WLAN problem. We got a core services problem because I didn't update the radius certificates because I got busy and didn't pay attention to their expiration date. Not a wireless problem. It's a problem that lies somewhere else that certainly manifests itself to wireless users and makes them feel like, the Wi-Fi indeed sucks. I talked about, things like black holing the internet destination. That's really kind of frustrating. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very much. And again, this, might not be very common for other people. But when the destination is denied through security, firewall settings or, routing, black holing, whatever, very, very frustrating to the end user. And again, feels like a wireless problem. Another one of my own, I built the uplink trunk and I forgot to put in a VLAN, and the wireless system is more than happy to broadcast the SSID, regardless of whether the SSID, the VLAN that it maps to is there or not. It's happy to put the SSID out so people connect and they can't get anywhere. Again, not a wireless problem. It's a topology problem back in the core, further back down the string. It happens. We're all human. Human beings are doing the config. And if you say, well, AI fixes a lot of that and takes the human, the human mistakes away. No, AI is usually programmed by humans. And I'm here to tell you, it's not perfect either. But things happen regardless of the safeguards you put in place to make sure that they don't. Things do happen. The DHCP pool being exhausted, this is one of those that, okay, well, why do we have 1,000 people on the network, but just these 5 can't get on? What's going on with these 5 people or this one person? And if you don't have good logging, it can be hard to know that your DHCP pool has been exhausted. But it's one more thing that I've experienced that it's like, no, you don't have a wireless problem, I promise. Look at all these other people that are on and doing fine. Well, let me go look at some other stuff. Okay, boom. Got to expand the DHCP pool. This one was a lot of fun. 250 iPads, literally in metal cabinets, can't connect. Okay, well, say no more. Nothing wrong with the wireless network. Let's talk about what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. And then in that same situation, people screaming about the wireless not working. It's a new use paradigm. And before they could do anything, they had to fire up this authenticator app. They just didn't know it. The training wasn't very good. They didn't understand the order they were supposed to do things in. And once one of our technicians explained to them when they went to troubleshoot the quote unquote wireless problem, they were able to show them, okay, well, let's look at your workflow because my wireless is just fine. What are you doing different from me on the same wireless network? Oh, you guys have to use this authenticator app. Then the end users are like, well, what's that? Well, I would have hoped that you would have been training. Yeah, they mentioned, or you would have gotten training. Yeah, they mentioned something about it, but I didn't really get it. Okay, got past the authentication app problem, authenticator app problem, and suddenly the Wi-Fi works again. Again, none of these are wireless problems, but they all started off being reported that way. And you could have, on any one of these, you could have just wallowed troubleshooting wireless for problems that didn't exist if in your mind you went to the fact this has to be a wireless problem because a wireless user is struggling. You zoom out, you free yourself of that shackle that it has to be a wireless problem, and all of a sudden things clear up. I've said it a few times now to the end user, they all feel like Wi-Fi is broke. And that's what they report because they don't know any better, right? There's a lot of technical ignorance in play here. And that's not insulting to anybody. You don't know what you don't know. You can only frame your report of trouble in verbiage that you're familiar with and with what you think you know and see. I'm using wireless. The thing I'm trying to do isn't working on wireless. Your wireless has to be a problem. To me, it makes perfect sense. It's naive, but for the end user who just wants to be productive on a business wireless network, to me, it also makes sense. It's not their fault that they don't know that this isn't necessarily a wireless problem, right? So again, it's incumbent upon us to zoom out and get to the bottom of things because that's our job. We have to know more than they do. We have to know that it might not be a wireless issue. And we only get there by doing this exercise of zooming out. Most efficiently, we get there. And I'm saying you also need to do that when you communicate. Put yourself in the other guy's place or the other gal's place. They're having problems. And a lot of us as tech people aren't the best communicators, or maybe our processes aren't the best. It goes a long way if somebody says, yeah, I've got a problem. As you're finding things and ruling them out, communicate with them. Well, guess what? Your AP is up. There's no problems on the AP. We see 50 other people on the AP along with you. That's all looking good. We don't have any internet outages. Everything looks fine from here, yet you are having a problem. Totally accept that. Let's figure out what's going on for you, right? Just give that communication. It kind of helps build organizational reputation. It builds confidence. Your users get confidence that you know what you're doing, you know where you're looking. You're giving them some positive feedback. Yep, this is all working, even though you're dealing with something that isn't, and we'll get to what that is. Don't feed into the notion of them telling you the network sucks. Yeah, well, we get a lot of people complaining. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, let's try to see what's going on. Yeah, take the high road and let them know what is working and that you've gonna solve their problem. And as you're working towards the steps, communicate that. Really, really goes a long way. And just the act of doing that communication process, again, it's one thing that for a lot of people is very challenging for some reason. You get so lost in troubleshooting, you forget that there are people out there that want to know how it's going as you're troubleshooting. All that being said, you know, to me, this act of zooming out, getting this big view going on, getting the 10,000 foot view, the ability to do that kind of stuff when trouble hits, to me, it's one of those uh, skill sets or one of those talents, if you will, that separates the better people from the rest of the pack. Real easy to get tripped up and focus on the wrong thing. So easy. We deal with a lot of complicated systems. But I found that the better quality responders have the ability to do this thing I'm talking about, zooming out, right? But to get there, it does take self-discipline and it takes critical thought. I know that that can be an overused term, critical thinking, it's so important. I have also found that the people who get most hung up on, I have to judge your critical thinking, it's like they're probably the ones that are the least capable of it. It's just something that you develop. It's a quiet tool that you use. What I mean by self-discipline is like, geez, I'm so tempted to want to bite on that as the problem, but let me slow down a little bit and make sure that there's not some other stuff in play here that could also feel like the problem. Let me just try to be efficient here and just not bite on the first thing that seems like it could be the problem.